At its most basic, Gruuuun is about doing yard work in the Dutch countryside. You're here for a weekend to make your employer's lawn look presentable and be gone by Monday morning. The only problem is that some of your tools are misplaced, so you have to go find them. In the developer's words, it's a very normal game about gardening, which is like saying that Spec Ops: The Line was a normal third-person shooter. The developer, Sockpop, always stood out to me. They're a small team that essentially comes together to release a bunch of game jam ideas. Most of their games are smaller in scale and share a specific visual style. Stacklands is a good example, and while they dabbled in a bunch of different genres, this is their first horror game. That already made it land on my radar, but it's still their most ambitious title to date. The kicker being that the art style hasn't changed that much. I'll get more into that later, but all you need to know is that this is a very short 4-hour game, with a lot of things to spoil. So, if you plan on playing Gruuuun, this is where we part ways. But for the rest of you, let's start with the presentation. If I had to put it into words, looking at Grunn is like being in a dream. The low fidelity with the models and texture warping makes me think of some older PlayStation 1 titles, but it's clearly not trying to emulate those games. That isn't a low draw distance, it's just the fog rolling in from the north, which gets more pronounced as it gets closer to night. The vibrant colors here make some of these areas look downright gorgeous. Despite the fog, this actually looks like a pretty nice place to visit. Just not for very long. Even while occupied with your chores, it's hard to ignore that despite it being the weekend, for long stretches of time, no one's outside, or at least, not around you. Is it always like this here? The first half hour really struck a chord with me, because this feeling of isolation is dangerously close to some actual nightmares I've had growing up. And after learning that this area was actually based on a small town where the dev's father grew up, it hit me. This is like trying to describe your childhood from memory, when you were like 4. You may have been born here, but you moved away before you could really grow up here. You kinda remember what things look like, but you couldn't understand anyone. And while some things stuck out to you, a lot of details are fuzzy, like faces. It's a distant memory, filtered through a dream. It's kind of a testament to the atmosphere that it can still unsettle you without anything really scary happening. Grunn is a very slow burn kind of game that makes me glad I didn't grow up in the Southeast Asian countryside. These kind of horror games are the ones that I like. Usually.
Hey buddy, I think you got the wrong door.
The visuals are all well and good, but the sound design and more importantly, the music, is what brings everything together. The sounds of the tools definitely caught me off guard. At times that playful popping contrasts with the game's tone, but it's almost disarming how goofy these sounds can be. Pair that with the music almost drowning in the ambience, it really carries that sinking feeling of there being something more to this place. But you can't quite nail down what, and with Twin Peaks being used as a huge inspiration for Gruuuun, it's clear what game this is trying to emulate. The atmosphere is obviously very similar to Piglet's Big Game.
We live inside a dream.
On a surface level, the world is so innocuous and nothing stands out. Most of the gameplay involves finding items to help others. You get a domain expansion, but the big takeaway here is that both games are more creepy than they are scary. Yet there are parts that feel like this game is for YouTubers. Derogatory. This game has a lot of jump scares in it. One of the worst ways you can portray your player's expectations is to flash a scary thing in front of the player and make a loud noise. It's a fleeting moment that tickles my lizard brain, and it's telling me that I'm not playing a slow burn horror game anymore. I'm in a haunted house and I didn't buy the Nobu necklace. Well, time to give my heart a workout. But to be fair, there is an option specifically for this. It's not that I don't like jump scares. If there's sufficient build up to it and it doesn't look like a brick when I'm checking the waveform, it's fine. I just don't like these jump scares. I don't need the gameplay equivalent of those giant red arrows to tell me that I should shit my pants. It already happened. Now let's talk about gardening. I already discussed your groundkeeping duties, and honestly, you could just cut plants for the whole weekend. Okay, maybe don't cut everything. But even right away, the game is forcing you to not be a shut-in. Again, you're missing tools, so it's time to explore the town. There are Polaroids all over the place, and these serve as mini objectives. Go to this place of interest at a certain time to get a new item or see a new thing. You can solve a majority of these puzzles long before you pick up these Polaroids. It's more to point you in the right direction. You're also free to just ignore these clues altogether, not looking deeper into the main mystery, but instead participate in the various vignettes throughout the town, like having a picnic, committing arson, or giving these kids their instruments so they can perform in the public park. But remember, you have a job to do. I finished my chores, and come Monday, I'm out of this place. right on cue. I didn't save enough money for the bus ride. I didn't even think about that. I should have just taken that job at Lidl. No matter what you do, you'll eventually get an ending slide. There are 11 of these in total, with a good chunk of them having nothing to do with the overall plot, mainly serving to show the various ways that you can die in this place. Finishing your chores doesn't take very long. It's good to do a little bit of gardening, but we have more pressing matters, mainly the mystery of what the is actually happening. While not all answers are shown, when getting an ending, we finally meet our employer, and he gives us one hell of an objective. Evil spirits have invaded the town, trapping our employer in some sort of mystical prison, and we have to find 4 idols that function as their ties to the physical world. This is where the Twin Peaks influence starts to set in. Bad supernatural things are happening in a small town, but most of the residents are still just living their lives, oblivious to everything. So to stop foreign entities, it takes a foreigner to save the day. That makes it sound more like an 80s creature feature more than anything Lynchian, but you can't deny the influence is there. After we get that codec call's worth of information, he sends us all the way back to Saturday morning, resetting all the events, but fortunately, making things easier as well. The cyclical nature of Grunn means that we can do things faster if you remember the conditions required to open up shortcuts. Fans of classic speedrunner titles like Spelunky or Space Kids will feel right at home here. My favorite part is that certain key items that were tied to certain events can be found just lying on the ground if you know where to look. This is one of those games where there's a lot of running around, and even though I'd hazard to call this a walking sim, there's a surprising amount of variety with the environments to keep things interesting. But one of the more interesting things about Gruuuun is the real lack of any lore. Nothing is really explained about the entity's origin, who the gardener was and his connection to the supernatural, or really anything involving the residents of this small town. Case in point, you exorcise the evil spirits in the church, save your employer from his whack-ass prison, and then you leave. Because honestly, I don't need answers. Maybe the entities were long-forgotten deities. They could be like the creatures from the mist, or hell, maybe it's like Ed and Eddie and this is all purgatory or something. Who cares? The point is that having concrete answers wouldn't make me enjoy the game more. There can be fun in just seeing things as is. A bunch of angry spirits are haunting the small town using powers that we don't truly understand. I'm satisfied with that. Gruuuun is a short and sweet horror game that you could fittingly beat over a weekend. I do admit I needed a guide to get the good ending, but that's just because I got impatient. And even though I had some gripes, this is still one of the better horror indie games that I played this year. Admittedly, Twin Peaks and horror games are a huge weak spot for me. As such, I highly recommend that you get a copy. I hope Sock Pop keeps making slow burn horror games in the future. Thanks for watching. I have an email you can send recommendations to, or you can just scream at me in the comments below. Come back next time for the Greek video. Or maybe the Magica one. Literally whatever I get to first. Take care of yourselves, and see you next time.